In the 1920s and early 30s, Germany's Weimar Republic was a global epicenter for artistic experimentation. Museums and galleries championed the avant-garde, filling their walls with the fractured perspectives of Cubism, the stark geometries of the Bauhaus, and the distorted figures of Expressionism. This art was cosmopolitan and internationally celebrated. It thrived on raw, unfiltered emotional power, often confronting the anxieties of the post-war world head-on rather than offering a comfortable escape. The rising National Socialist Party viewed this creativity as a literal biological threat. They labeled distorted figures as biological evidence of sick, decaying society. The official party line demanded a completely different aesthetic. Approved Aryan art had to be fiercely realistic, aggressively heroic, and distinctly Nordic in its subjects, relying heavily on idealized peasant families, monumental classical figures, and glorified war scenes. When Adolf Hitler became chancellor in January 1933, the state's apparatus immediately began a programmatic overhaul of the German mind. Before installing a new totalitarian reality, the state had to systematically erase the existing cultural landscape. The first strikes were entirely bureaucratic. In April 1933, the regime passed a law for the restoration of the civil service. Because German museum directors were state employees, the government used this law to legally fire anyone who had championed modern art or displayed international tendencies. Stripping these directors of their posts effectively decapitated the institutional support system for the avant-garde overnight. The galleries that once bought and protected these artists were suddenly run by party loyalists. A few months later, propaganda minister Joseph Goebbels created the Reich Chamber of Culture. This agency became the ultimate administrative chokehold over the nation's creative output. Membership in the chamber was mandatory for anyone working as an artist, writer, or musician. By denying membership to Jewish creators and those whose style didn't conform to the party's rigid standards, the state locked out thousands of artists from their professions. This early stage of censorship relied heavily on paperwork. It was a calculated administrative process designed to make the creation and exhibition of modern art legally impossible without firing a single shot. For the artists themselves, the paperwork quickly materialized into physical enforcement. The state issued the Malverbot, a strict, legally binding ban on painting altogether. Gestapo agents enforced this ban through psychological terror, conducting unannounced surprise inspections of artists' private homes and studios. These agents would walk into a room and literally smell the air for wet turpentine. A damp brush or the lingering scent of oil paint was enough to trigger an arrest. The expressionist painter Emil Nolde, even though he had initially supported the party, was banned from working. To avoid detection, he retreated to his home and resorted to painting hundreds of tiny, postcard-sized watercolors on scraps of paper, works he called his unpainted pictures, which were easily hidden when the police arrived. By the summer of 1937, the regime dramatically accelerated its efforts. A special commission was authorized to sweep through public collections across the country and purify the museums of any remaining objectionable material. In a matter of weeks, the commission systematically stripped the walls and storage vaults of institutions in Munich, Berlin, Hamburg, and beyond. They confiscated roughly 16,000 individual works of art. Through a precise combination of bureaucratic paperwork and localized physical terror, the state had successfully stripped an entire nation of its vibrant, world-renowned cultural heritage in exactly 4 years. This cultural purge culminated in Munich in July 1937, when the regime's ideological war on art took physical shape into massive, dueling exhibitions. The Great German Art Exhibition opened first inside Hitler's newly constructed Haus der Deutschen Kunst, intended as the ultimate showcase of the approved, idealized aesthetic. Inside, the strictly controlled environment featured approved paintings carefully spaced along massive white walls. The reverent presentation created a completely sterile atmosphere. Just 1 day later, and a short distance away, a second show opened, the Degenerate Art Exhibition. This was the public debut for the thousands of works the commission had just confiscated from the state's museums. Here, curation was weaponized. Masterpieces were jammed into a narrow building, chaotically clustered and stripped of frames. Organizers painted mocking graffiti directly onto the walls, using aggressive slogans to equate the artists with mental illness. Yet, the operation backfired in one crucial metric: The Degenerate art exhibition drew over 2 million visitors, vastly outperforming the heavily promoted Approved show. The regime could confiscate the physical art, but they couldn't immediately destroy the public's intense fascination with it. The aftermath of the exhibitions revealed a sharp pivot. The Nazi leadership quickly realized that the very art they condemned held immense financial value. Rather than destroying their most valuable degenerate pieces, they quietly organized international auctions to capture desperately needed foreign currency to fund the state. This document from 1939 shows an advertisement for the Fischer Gallery in Lucerne, Switzerland. Here, 126 masterpieces, pulled directly from German public museums, were auctioned off to an audience of international dealers. While high-profile pieces by Van Gogh and Picasso were traded for foreign capital, the thousands of lesser-known works deemed unexploitable faced a much grimmer fate. In March 1939, the propaganda ministry gathered over 1,000 paintings and nearly 4,000 drawings and watercolors. In the courtyard of the Berlin Fire Department's headquarters, they burned the entire collection in a massive bonfire. The 1933 civil service laws used to fire museum directors were the same legal instruments later used to remove Jews from all public life. By defining degeneracy in art and erasing it through administrative bans and police enforcement, the state demonstrated how easily a nation's identity could be rewritten before the physical purges of the 1940s began.